Welcome to Film at 50, a podcast that celebrates semi-centennials in the world of cinema. I'm your host, Brian Rowe. Very thrilled to welcome Marcus Gorman back to the podcast today to talk about The Harder They Come, released in the United States in February 1973. How are we doing, Marcus?
We're doing great. Happy holidays. We got through it.
Yeah. So we have a few final 1972 films on the podcast for January. Those would have just dropped. And now we're starting the new season of 1973 titles. Last week would have been the first episode for that schedule, and that was Last Tango in Paris. That was an interesting film to watch and discuss. And now this week, we are talking about another film like Last Tango in Paris that had its premiere in 72, but didn't actually open in the United States until early 73. Had you heard of The Harder They Come before, Marcus?
Yes, I had. I can't remember the channel, but there's a cable channel, it might be gone for all I know, that splits between concerts and movies about music or starring musicians. It's just this tiny little channel next to MTV and VH1. I can't believe I didn't even do the research ahead of time, but yeah, like 10 years ago I saw it and I knew Jimmy Cliff, the name, and I knew some of his songs. I know his cover of I Can See Clearly Now because of Cool Runnings, which is a movie I love, but who knows how racially sensitive it is 30 years later.
Yeah, I'd heard at least two or three of these songs before, and I feel like they popped up in a lot of other movies, like 90s films. And there was a song in this movie that made me remember Speed 2 Cruise Control.
Yep.
You can get it if you really, what's that one?
Yeah, you can get it if you really want.
Get it if you really want.
Song of this. Right, because that's a
over the end of Speed 2. I was like, I know that song.
I haven't seen that movie in almost 30 years, so I wouldn't have remembered that.
I as a Sandra Bullock super fan, I was in a certain place in 1997 where I had the soundtrack and it was a thing. I don't talk about it much anymore. But yeah, so this was a Criterion release, right? It was on DVD.
I have it from from collector's edition from the Shout Factory.
Oh, okay. Because I was vaguely aware of it from the Criterion label. Like I think I had seen the cover before, but not until I was doing my research of the early 73 movies did I really look into this. And I said, the first film ever produced in Jamaica. That's interesting. And it has really good reviews. And I was able to find it on pretty easily accessible on line on streaming. So I was like, let's do this one. I'm not super familiar with it, but I watched it last night, and I think I kind of agree with Roger Ebert, and that it goes a little bit too like plot heavy in the last 20 minutes. But outside of that, there's a really great tone and atmosphere to this movie that I enjoyed.
It's such a good vibe.
Vibe is the
yeah, that's why I really respond to it, because it is technically. Oh, you can see my cat back there. Hello, Flaggy. It is technically a true story. Like this was a notorious outlaw in Jamaica in the 1940s. Ivanhoe, yeah. And so it's combining that with what is essentially a long-form music video for one of the greatest albums of all time. This album is in the Library of Congress.
Wow.
And they make sure you hear every song several times. I, as somebody who loves musicals and music-based films, anytime there's something on Turner Classic or like one of the retro channel, which I no longer get on my Xfinity package, anything playing in rep houses or revival houses that stars a musician, and especially if it's a promotion for an album, I'm obsessed with that. This comes in a long line of musicians playing outlaws or trying to break out, and also trying to combine the ostensibly brand new concept of the music video, because music videos aren't really a thing till the late 70s, and before that there's scope of tones and movies and short films. This one is really particular template that a lot of other films follow. I agree again with Ebert that it does get a little weird and plotty, but that's also what's kind of cool about it. The fact that they're kind of seem to be making it up as they go along is really fascinating to watch. You're not really sure where this is going for a lot of the film, which is all I ask for movies at this point. I've seen too many goddamn films. I'm sure you have too. I'm more interested in something that doesn't quite work, that kind of bangs around a bunch of different tones without ever settling on one, than one that is just a perfect version of an okay thing all the way through.
Yeah. Aren't you sick of movies? Like, this is what really pains me now, is when you're watching a typical conventional movie, and at like the hour mark, hour 10, that thing happens that like breaks up the two people, or
yeah,
like,
I hate
I'm
it.
like
No, and it has to happen.
Recently? I'm trying to remember what I watched in the last 2 weeks where I'm like, okay, that is done.
Exactly.
Like, I'm over it.
Because I'm catching up with like 2022 films. You know, I ran into one recently where I'm like, oh, we're here now. Okay, I'll just go to my.
Was
phone
it Marry Me? I think it was Marry Me.
Oh, because you just at least that's a
which
pretty
I
good
enjoyed.
movie. That's a really
it's
good
actually
movie.
Very charming, but like they were really happy for a while, and I'm like, oh, there's gonna be that thing where they split up, and you just know what's coming, and then it happens, and then it's like, okay, now we have to sit through 15 minutes of this part before they're back again.
There is a chance to do it well, but they choose not to. Okay, and a very recent example is the third act of Puss in Boots: The Last Witch, which is a shockingly good movie.
Which is what every review of that movie is how it opens with. It's shockingly good.
Yeah,
like nobody expected it.
No, I mean, I expected it after people kept talking about it. But yeah, exactly.
So I didn't read Roger Ebert's review before starting this last night, and I thought about 30-40 minutes, I'm like, okay, this is just going to be kind of this guy's life day to day. He's gonna like get into music, and that's gonna be the story, and it's gonna have this documentary feel, and there's not going to be any like genre conventions here at all. And then we get a scene towards the end where he's like literally running with a gun shooting after a guy as the rest of the town like follows him. I'm like, when did the movie turn to this?
Well, yeah, because it's a little awkward getting there, but also like, I don't know how they tell stories in Jamaica. Maybe this is, how their oral history is. Because the crime stuff kind of comes out of nowhere, but also like they plant the seeds that he's coming from country and he just can't catch a break. He goes to work at the church and he fixes bikes and he falls in love with that pretty young lady, and then gets in trouble, and he gets in a huge fight and stabs the other dude because he's like, that's my bicycle, I worked on it. And then he's like, I'm gonna try to make music. Oh, you're only gonna pay me $20 for the rights to all of this? No. So it is a movie about how every single thing in the world is rigged, especially in Jamaica at this point in their history, both the time they're talking about in the 40s and the time that this is set and shot, which is the early 70s. So the crime stuff, if you're saying the whole movie should have been crime, certainly yes. But it seems that the story is rigged. All he can do, this is their version of a Bonnie and Clyde story. Nothing makes sense. The only way out is through. And at this time, and with what he has left with no money, all he can do is at first work in the marijuana fields, and then that goes bust. Everybody at every side is just screwing with him and taking away his money. So it feels like I must become an outlaw. But on the second viewing, this is my second viewing, I thought the crime stuff and the outlaw stuff started way earlier.
Okay, so it wasn't as like you thought when you saw it the first time that the crime stuff happened within like the first 30-40 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, because it did for me come out of left field, because there is a long stretch of time without any of that.
Totally. Right? Luckily, it involves great music. And see, like, yes. I've talked about this before. One of my favorite things in movies is somebody putting together a song ostensibly live in front of you. And this happens several times in this movie. And when he's finally got the chance to record the title track, The Harder They Come, which has the entire theme of the movie within it, that they keep repeating over every single other sequence, it's just gorgeous. And it's just such a good song in the middle of a bunch of other great songs. This has 3 times ended up on the Rolling Stones most influential albums of all time. Wow. It's always stayed around the hundreds of the top 500 most influential or greatest. I forget which, because I don't really read Rolling Stone anymore.
Yeah, that song is great. You hear it at least twice in the movie. Is it more than twice? And like, so they changed the title later on. Like, it wasn't going to be called The Harder They Come. So was it like in production that they changed the title and then they created this new song and then added it like later? I don't think they had this song before they started shooting.
Oh, I don't know. Because it has some new Jimmy Cliff stuff and some old stuff. Because and they use it twice, and they started early, and they should have kept it for the near the end of the movie, is Many Rivers to Cross, which is that really sad ballad, which is just an incredible song. Like, and coincidentally, like a month after I watched this for the first time, he showed up on the Colbert Report and sang the title track and Many Rivers to Cross.
On the Colbert Report?
On the Colbert Report. Well, because this is a movie about anarchy, about the working class, about capitalism ruining everything. And the Colbert Report was very much about the mockery of American Republicans. And so to have these musicians come on that really have these incredible protest songs, which and Jimmy Cliff's history of protest music fits into the only other movie he acted in, which we might talk about later.
Yeah, that's the only other.
It's almost the exact same character.
Oh, so that he read the script and said, I can do this one more time.
Yeah.
14 years later. Yeah, you mentioned Many Rivers to Cross. That's another great song from this movie, which is also took me back to a 90s favorite action film. The Long Kiss Goodnight from 96 has this song, and a very specific memory, Marcus. I watched this movie with a friend of mine, Thomas, and when there's a moment in The Long Kiss Goodnight where it cuts to Samuel L. Jackson and Gina Davis in a car, and the song Many Rivers to Cross starts playing very loudly, but the camera's only on Gina Davis. And then she kind of rolls her eyes and looks over at the driver, Samuel L. Jackson, off camera. He's off camera. And it sounded in the moment like Samuel L. Jackson was singing. And my friend and I just rewound it and went, oh, wait. That's not Sam. We thought Samuel Jackson was singing, and it might have been one of like the 10 biggest laughs watching a movie in my entire life, because we completely ballistic thinking that Sam Jackson was singing the song. But that is also a takeaway too, is just how many films that these songs appear in later because they've been so popular for decades.
Totally. Yeah. It with any musician with IMDb, you have to trawl through the soundtrack listing before you get to the acting. So like, oh no, what are we going to talk about this week? Let me get to it. It's soundtrack 97 films.
97 film soundtracks?
Yeah, and composer for 6.
Wow. What, like where he actually was like composing for the film and post-production, like creating new music?
Or like, because like I'm sure it's considered he's one of the composers for this film too, because sometimes songs by are different than songs that show up on the soundtrack in terms of crediting. Yes, 97, just I Am Groot, Mayans MC, The Sarah Cox Show, Call the Midwife, 911, blah 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 blah. It just goes back forever. The X Factor, Warm Bodies,
Jimmy Cliff is in Warm Bodies in one of his songs.
Yeah, one of his songs in Limbo, Mission Impossible 3, Hitch, Something's Gotta Give, One Tree Hill, The Muse, Speed 2. Baywatch, Cool Runnings, Cool as Ice. Yeah.
Is Long Kiss Goodnight on there? I'm not making that up.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, Many Rivers to Cross, 96.
Many Rivers to Cross.
Marked. Oh, and Marked for Death, which I think he's in briefly. Or he made a song for that.
Like, I think he's in a couple other movies, but I think he's playing himself or something. He's not an actor.
Wait, it says Self 73.
So a couple other titles this movie. Originally, the title was Reigen. Is that how you say it? Like, that's what they were going to call the movie?
Yeah, that was the outlaw nickname for Ivanhoe.
And then they were going to call it Hard Road to Travel.
Right.
Which I don't think either one of those titles works as well as The Harder They Come. Hard Road to Travel sounds like a Bing Crosby.
Right. Well, there's already the Road to Bali, Road to Jamaica. Why not?
Road to Jamaica. Imagine if that was the name of this Road to Jamaica. I mean, I guess they could have put the word Jamaica in the title. It's such such a character in the movie. But thinking about the title, I was like, that new film, The Western, The Harder They Fall. does that have any, I looked on Wikipedia right before we popped on there and I didn't see anything. Does that have any reference at all to this movie? The harder they come, the harder they fall?
No, I think
It's
it's
just
the I think for
coincidence?
I think it's coincidence. I think
Okay.
for that one, they're going off of the phrase, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, other than, you know, that movie is made by the brother of musician Seal, I don't really know any connection.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I saw that film last year. I really enjoyed it. And
Right.
I
Yeah, you
just
mentioned
thought
it
of it
on
this morning.
yeah, you mentioned it on our Sounder episode, I believe, as your pick.
Oh, right. Yeah, Sounder. And
Yeah.
then I was thinking about it because I was like, the harder they come, the harder they fall. While I was watching on YouTube last night, there's a great 3.5 minute clip on YouTube of Jimmy Cliff in a recording studio singing the song. And then there's a clip of Willie Nelson singing the same song.
Oh, I would love to listen to Willie Nelson cover
Willie
this.
Nelson, it looks like he's in Jamaica, maybe.
Hell yeah.
And a lot
Willie
of Jamaican
Nelson.
kids are like running around him as he's like doing the harder they come.
Yeah, speaking of like outlaw country, hell yeah. Willie Nelson, incredible person. I was about to say RIP, but he's still around, isn't he?
Is he still with us?
I think he's yeah. I worked for Geeks Who Drink, and we had Geek Bowl at Austin City Limits in Austin, and there's it's called Willie's Ledge or Willie's Balcony or something, Willie's Perch, and it's next to a dressing room, and it's where you go to smoke weed.
Oh, okay.
Because that's where Willie would toke up before and or after or during the show. So
interesting.
I know his smoking areas in Austin.
So some other trivia here. So the main actor, Jimmy Cliff, his previous acting experience was only in school productions.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was interesting. Production began on the film in 1970, and it dragged on for about 2 more years due to inadequate funding. Right. So is it like the kind of film where they'd shoot a chunk here and there, wait to get more like financing, make another part of the movie?
Yeah, and almost the whole thing is ADR'd anyway, so that makes sense. Like this is like, you know, how Peter Jackson made Bad Taste on weekends for a year or two, right?
It's I love those stories of like filmmakers who get their start by making a movie over the course of a year plus, and they're only shooting it like on weekends, and then they wait to get some more money, and maybe 3 months go by. It's like David Lynch's Eraserhead, which didn't that shoot over like 5 years or something crazy like that?
Yeah, I don't know the number, but yeah, because he was that's his AFI film.
Yeah, I want to say he started it around 1970, 71, and then it doesn't actually have its premiere until 77. So it was like a long time.
Movies take forever. Yeah, but you and I, we both went to film school, and we both said, you know what? I don't know about this.
I don't know if I have it in me. I just finished the amazing oral history book about Mad Max Fury Road by Kyle Buchanan, which is a fantastic read. And I knew it took George Miller a while. I did not realize it was like a 20-year project, and that they almost started making it twice, and then it fell apart. And then they finally started it in the summer of 2012, shot for like 7 months, and then was not able to shoot the beginning and ending. So a year after that, they reassembled in Australia for another month or so to shoot the beginning and end. And then the movie doesn't come out till 2015. I mean, that is sticking it for the long haul.
And I like over that 20 years, first of all, Kyle Buchanan is an incredible writer. Yes. So God bless him. But even during that long gestation period, you know, when Mel Gibson was still going to do it like twice.
Yeah.
there still wasn't a finished script. It was a storyboard. It was just vibes and images. And Tom Hardy especially was like, what's going on? I'm in hell.
Yeah,
it's so hot out here. What in God's name are we doing? And then when he saw the movie, he like apologized.
Yeah, that's the part I read this morning. It was so moving. Like Tom Hardy, I guess, was an asshole on set for most of the shooting, and didn't really know what they were doing. And then at the Cannes Film Festival next to George Miller, watching it in May of 2015. Tom Hardy went, holy shit, this is amazing, and apologized to George Miller. And so I didn't always know what we were doing, but boy, did you pull out that must have been really gratifying for George Miller to put up with some of that stuff. And then you just bring it like at the end of the day, you bring it in this amazing movie. But boy, yeah, Harder They Come didn't have that quite of a long haul, but it warms my heart, these filmmakers who just stick with it till its end, whether it's 2 years or 20 years. Like you see it through. Yeah. And they could have, like, you know, shot half of this movie, Harder They Come, and like, well, let's move on here. But they kept on it for 2+ years until it finally came out, and then it becomes this little cult classic, right? Like a small cult movie.
Yeah, and then like no American company wanted to touch it because it would have had to have been subtitled. This is one of the few movies in English that is subtitled in English. And Roger Corman, ever the mensch, grabbed it and released it through New World.
New World.
And God bless him for that. And this is the movie that kind of introduces Jamaica to a lot of people. As you said, it's like really their first film. This is a giant part of 70s independent cinema. It does an incredible job in spreading what Jamaican patois is like. The language in this is just incredible to listen to. It's so good. Yeah.
Subtitles don't bother me, Marcus. I'm starting to, the last year or two, I watch a lot of things in English with subtitles. I don't know if you do that at all.
Oh no,
I'm doing it more and more.
That's all I do.
Like I don't know what it is. Like I can watch stuff without subtitles. Obviously, I go to the theater all the time, but there's something I feel like I get like 10% more out of the movie, especially now. Like my TV downstairs, it's kind of far from the couch, and sometimes I don't pick up like everything that they say, but if it's written on the screen, I can usually just pick up a few more things. So
yeah,
I find myself doing that more and more.
No, I do that a lot. And because I like watch movies however you want. We've all watched incredible movies at home, in rep houses, and giant screens. I prefer the theatrical experience because my television is not 30 feet tall.
Right.
That's the difference, but also, you know, the all-encompassing darkness and sound. But I also go to some open caption screenings because they're usually in the morning, and that doesn't bother me at all. I saw 5 movies last year with open caption.
So I've never been to a theatrical screening where sometimes we get them here in Reno. It says open caption. That means they're subtitled.
Yeah.
And it's like, even if it's in English or it's only foreign film.
No. It's for English.
Okay. Because Corsage is opening here shortly, and it listed as open caption. So I thought that was interesting.
Oh, well, that's weird because that movie's in German and French and English.
Oh, so maybe it just means, and that for that film, maybe it means subtitled.
Yeah, it means whatever theater that is. It's not really paying attention, but they're also, I guess, they're also letting people know it's a foreign film because it has Vicky Krieps, who has been in 3 major English language films. Also, I watched that 3 days ago through the Independent Film Award screener setup. It's great.
Is it worth seeing, Corsage?
I think so a lot. I don't really like costume period dramas, but this one has kind of a punk atmosphere to it. Not as much, not like Marie Antoinette, but it's more that vibe. It's meant to be very modern. Vicky Krieps, or however you pronounce her name, is great in it, and it's got a very modern vibe to it and also it's very open that it is a made-up story about a real life figure.
Okay. Yeah, the other one that comes to mind was Babylon had 2:30 p.m. screenings. I wanted to see it around 2:30, and there was a 2:00 and there was a 2:30. The 2:30 said open caption, and I wasn't exactly sure what that meant. I was like, does that mean we're gonna get like the text on the screen for everything that the characters say?
Yeah, as opposed to closed caption in theaters. I watched it when I saw Avatar 2 the first time. The group of 5 Chinese 20-year-olds had captions up, and that it's sort of like this right here visually. It's like you connect this to your like a little screen. You could attach it to the armrest, and then you kind of put in front of your face underneath the screen, and read it out in red. That's a little distracting, so I'm glad I saw Avatar 2 a second time the next day in a different format.
That's cool. So with The Harder They Come, this was, as I said before, this is the first film produced in Jamaica. The film was a sensation in Jamaica due to its naturalistic portrayal of Black Jamaicans in real locations. According to the director, Black people seeing themselves on the screen for the first time created an unbelievable audience reaction. I bet that was really exciting to see their community, their culture in a movie. Maybe they had seen a little bit of it in other films, but this was the first one that was from beginning to end, right?
Well, sure. Yeah. Because like we see them go to the movies in the first 20 minutes, and like that's very intentional that we watch them watch a movie, which is Django, the original.
That's right.
And And then it ends with them watching the story, watching at the movies again. It's intercut with his Bonnie and Clyde ending, getting shot by the police, getting down, and then it cuts to the same crowd of people watching a movie. So it's making a point that Jamaica now has their own cinema, but also, if the legend becomes fact, print the legend. The old
John Ford.
What the Liberty Valance? That's the movie. Yeah. So it's like that. So not only is they're saying, oh, look, we actually made a movie, but look, this is how we consider outlaws. And since this is an outlaw who was shot to death 24 years earlier, this is the way we're telling the story now. I'm getting off on a tangent a little bit, but yes, remember, we're America. We make a lot of movies and we tend to watch our own movies. We're very isolated in that way. India is the same way. India, which makes more movies than we do, in like 5 or 6 different segments, and they're all a different film world. So they constantly remake each other's films because nobody's watching like the Telugu people aren't watching the Hindi films, and Tamil and all these are all over the place. So, but I, in a roundabout way, I'm going to be talking about, have you heard of this movie called Bad Black?
Bad Black. No.
Bad Black, or Who Killed Captain Alex. I want to make sure I get the country right so I don't offend anybody. It's What Hollywood is the name of this type of film, which is okay. It's a Uganda. So What Hollywood is a film studio based in Uganda, in Kampala, and they are these really cheaply made but super fun action films shot for like $10. So Bad Black is the best example. Who Killed Captain Alex is another one. They've made a bunch of them, and they make it so in Uganda, the way they watch movies is like VHS tapes come in, and they're obsessed with action movies. They like Jean-Claude Van Damme and Schwarzenegger, and these movies, when they're shown in tiny little enclaves where you can watch this movie, and they're not dubbed over. Nobody's dubbing them. There's a narrator doing it live, sort of explaining to you and making jokes as to what's happening on the screen. So they turn that style into a new type of movie where you're watching a silly action film that they're taking deadly seriously. And then there's a silly little narrator saying, ha ha, Stallone, every time like somebody like kicks. It's like a joy, like, oh, this is enemy stupid. So my point, roundabout way, is that maybe Jamaica, more because, not because it's full of Black people, it's just a country where they don't make films. All they have, all their input is probably a bunch of American stuff and a bunch of British stuff, probably. These are all, this is all just a guess. But so when you finally make your own, just like what Hollywood filmmakers have, you become a sensation. We finally did it. We have something that is our own. We have learned, because digital technology nowadays has allowed this to be possible. Whereas in 72, it takes you 2.5 years just to make a single independent film with non-actors. And it seemed like almost no live sound recording.
Right. That's such a great point, because you don't think about that when we're growing up in America and we're just seeing 1,000 American movies. You don't think about, like, imagine going years without seeing your community like on the screen, like you're just seeing American films, British films, and other things. And it's overwhelming, isn't it, Marcus, when you think about all the movies, the international films that come out year to year that we don't either don't have access to or we don't get to see. It's kind of crazy. Like I struggle just keeping up with American films year to year. So, like, to try to seek out everything, it's tough, because I know there's so much great stuff out there every year that I'll probably never see.
Yeah, like I try to, like, I've been watching a lot of Indian films because they show them around here, at least 4 other theaters. But there's also Chinese blockbusters, Korean blockbusters, and Japanese blockbusters. But they don't really program too many of their comedies. Oh, I see some Egyptian comedies which are programmed downtown, and they all are very weird, and they all kind of have the same tone. I can't explain it better than they all feel like Keeping Up with the Joneses, the John Hamm, Zach Galifianakis movie that came out election week 2016. So it's forever tied with Trump in my head.
Oh, that's the movie that was like the #1 movie of the week.
Well, it not the #1 movie, but it came out. No, totally side tangent. So the day of the election, I saw the 3rd Dan Brown, Tom Hanks movie. That was Inferno, which was just dreadful. And that morning, I was like, something's in the air. Something feels wrong. And
you're
then
sitting there watching Inferno and you're like, this is a bad sign.
And then 3 days later, Arrival comes out, which is all about not being able to communicate with other people and other things. And like I cried to the whole thing. And on Thursday, Trolls 1 had come out, which is all like about like LGBTQ trolls trying to deal with these evil Republicans. I'm like, this is a weird week. Very weird week. But yeah, so Seattle does program, and America does program these like the blockbuster films, but we don't see, and we see like the French. America loves French movies; they love British movies.
Yes,
but we don't really see any of the comedies from any of Europe. All these really wacky, particular ones that I would love to see when I've traveled abroad or I've been an exchange student. It's a country's comedies is where I most understand their tone and how they function, and I wish they would come out here outside of film festivals, and they don't.
Yeah, that's a good point. Have you seen in Seattle? Have you seen any like Jamaican cinema like come to town at all? Like these years, like these days?
Only in film festivals and only with the one that I program for. So we do have a Jamaican film every once in a while, but they just don't make that many. Like even countries you think would make a lot of movies, like Greece, for instance. Greece, because they're going through their own economic struggles. They make under 20 films a year or something. It's something ridiculous like that. And that's why Yorgo started making American language films, because he couldn't get a movie made in Greece after a while because there's no space for it. There's no system in place.
That's interesting. Would we say that The Harder They Come is still the most famous Jamaican film?
Is
there another one that's, I mean, obviously, yeah, I mean, like there's like, but I mean, it's not a Jamaican film, but like Cool Runnings comes to mind, but
right, which is directed by John Turteltaub.
That's right, and starring in one of his final roles, John Candy. But
right. I love that movie.
No, I'm looking through films produced in Jamaica. The Harder They Come would be most famous.
Oh, right. Because you said, this is a lesser known movie. I'm like, I know this as a giant independent film. It's, the template for so many different things. There's a 97 film I've been dying to see called Dance Hall Queen. And that is deeply loved. And I think it was just restored.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going through just the Wikipedia of Jamaican films, and they're all like Dr. No, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I'm like, these are not Jamaican films. Yeah, Glory to Gloriana. Kingston Paradise. Yeah, Night and Day does not count, the Tom Cruise movie.
That's not a Jamaican film.
No, Legends of the Fall does not count. Live and Let Die does not count.
So it's just like films that were shot in part in Jamaica.
Yeah, so they just don't make movies. I mean, it's a tiny island too. Like I understand.
I've been there. Yeah, I did a cruise there. We spent a day on Jamaica. It's beautiful. Yeah.
I'm going through like best Jamaican movies, and they're all mostly about music. Something called Shatas, the Dance Hall Queen. Third World Cop, which is a late 90s Jamaican action movie, which sounds really cool. Roots Time, which is Rastafarian. One Love. Babylon is a British movie, and that's a very well-known 80s movie about reggae. It's about the West Indies, but it is a British movie. But that's a great tie-in with this. If you like this, you should see Babylon.
Okay, I
know at SIF we showed like a movie about like a long distance runner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sprinter from 2018. There you go.
Splinter from 2000.
Sprinter. Like.
Oh, okay. And that's a Jamaican film.
Yeah, and and Rockers. Rockers is a really cool film.
Okay, you've seen both of those?
Yeah.
Okay, so those could be like a double feature, divine double feature.
Yeah. I would say like put on Rockers and put on Babylon if this was your vibe, and my special edition of Harder They Come comes with No Place Like Home. The filmmaker's follow-up film, which was lost for decades, and it's been restored, and it's on this 3-disc collector's edition.
Oh, what year was that?
That
does it say? Is it like a couple years later, or it's like
I think so? No Place Like Home, Perry.
No Place Like Home. So it's the same director, not Jimmy Cliff isn't part of it,
right? Okay. Oh no, 2006.
2006.
Ooh, yeah. 2000. So
their follow-up film.
34 years later. Yeah, Perry Henzell.
Like a like a massive Terrence Malick.
Right. He only has 2 movies to his name.
72 and 06.
Yep.
Well, that's one way to do it.
And he
Take your
died in
time.
06. So
And he died in 06?
and he made a movie called Man Free as well. I don't think he directed that. We're just researching on computers for fun on a podcast now. That's a documentary.
That would be a good way to go out, is like you spend 30, 40 years trying to get a movie made and you do it and then you die.
Right. Or you can, or you can do that and have it be 11 or 12 years, however much it was, and then die before, like Stanley Kubrick.
What Eyes Wide Shut. Well, yeah, but he had finished the movie though.
He had finished, and then they changed it after he died.
We can go, but it's, I mean, pretty close. It's not like it'd be one thing if Stanley Kubrick had been like, 3-4 months into shooting Eyes Wide Shut and died. Like,
yeah, this is not The Other Side of the Wind, the Orson Welles movie.
But so The Harder They Come is most famous for its reggae soundtrack. It's said to have brought reggae to the world.
Yeah.
Enormously successful in Jamaica. The film also reached the international market, has been described as possibly the most influential of Jamaican films, one of the most important films from the Caribbean. Its premiere was on June 5th, 1972 at the Carib Theater in Kingston, Jamaica, and then came out in the United States in February of 1973 in New York, released by Roger Corman's New World Pictures, to little attention. It became more popular when it started playing for midnight audiences nationwide in the United States the following April. Is like, I guess, when it started. This does feel like it would work better as a midnight movie,
right,
than just like going to the theater on a Saturday afternoon movie.
Totally.
Early 73.
And we talked about this in our Pink Flamingos episode,
yes.
that, the midnight movie wasn't really created around Pink Flamingos 72 and 73 type stuff. And so this is a very, that's where you put stuff that simply will not play during the day. This is a movie, you want to, take an edible, go just vibe to music, and then, root for him to live at the end. And then, he gets shot down.
Which
outlaw style.
There is a moment at the end of this movie where he is being shot at by 5 or more people, and he is out in the open for about 10 seconds. I mean, are these the worst shots ever?
They're stormtroopers.
Nobody. He's like running around just in the open. There's not a tree blocking, and these 5 guys are shooting at him, and he gets behind a giant rock, a boulder, and he's not been hit once. And I'm like,
you see, the officers are trying to take me down, and for a second he's invincible because he's feeling it. He is Jamaica, he is reggae music, he is the new man. But of course, as we know from all these outlaw stories, that cannot last.
Yeah.
There's deep DNA of wonderful westerns in here. There's a lot of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, to bring up another one, which
kind of the ending of that film.
Yeah, and that's a few years earlier, right?
So that's late 60s? Yeah, that's 69.
Okay,
it would have probably made its way to Jamaica by
1970. Absolutely, and that's a mega hit.
So there's probably a little influence from that, because the ending of The Harder They Come feels kind of like a Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid ending with its killing of the main character and then route.
Yeah. Now this movie's so cool because it's taking a lot of obvious beats and making them feel very particular and unique and fresh. And that's kind of all I ask for a lot of movies. Like, I'm fine with cliches if you're showing me a new world, and this, by God, shows you a new world. Even if you've you've been to Jamaica, but you probably had your eyes open for a lot of this. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, the texture of the country is what's so striking in this movie. You really get a sense of place here that you don't get in a lot of movies. Like, you can tell, like, this is an environment, an area that hadn't really been seen in other movies before. You're kind of cool. We're seeing it for the first time, and seeing that country in the early 70s is really cool. Like I've talked about on the podcast, I really love films that are shot in New York in the early 70s, and that like Shaft was a big one where there's a lot of location shooting, and there's something like I just really adore about seeing these places in the early 70s that don't look anything like
I'm the same way, because we're only a couple years apart, and the 70s is like close enough to the 80s that we grew up in,
but we also weren't there.
but it's also far enough away from the way these things looked in the 40s and 50s. As somebody from the Bay Area, I loved San Francisco in the 70s. A couple of weeks ago, I watched for the first time Freebie and the Bean from 1974, which is the craziest movie. It's Alan Arkin and James Caan as two renegade cops in San Francisco, just like getting in the most inelegant like car chases. Alan Arkin plays a Mexican, which is weird. The Bean is the reference.
Okay.
But it's nonstop San Francisco in the early 70s, and it's landmarks I barely recognize. It's porno theaters that aren't there anymore. It's liquor stores that aren't there anymore, and an entirely different skyline. Yes, 70. Yeah, for some reason, 70s for both of us just looks really cool on film and feels so otherworldly. Or even if you go insane, like Sidney Lumet's The Wiz, which I think is one of the great 70s movies, because instead of setting it in Oz like the play, he makes a nightmare version of New York as Oz. And it's so interesting, and it's so specific to that single year in time.
Yeah, we talked about that. We talked about Lady Sings the Blues a few months ago with Andrew Campbell, and we had both seen The Wiz, which is she's only in 3 theatrical films, Diana Ross. And so The Wiz is like, for me, that's the one that really stands out as like some of her finest work for movies. But The Wiz is such an intriguing film because it doesn't feel like a kind of movie that Sidney Lumet would have made at that time, but it's really cool.
It does, however, feel like a movie Joel Schumacher would have written.
That's right. If Joel Schumacher were directing at the end of the 70s. Did you like the performance by Jimmy Cliff? Like, what did you think of Jimmy's acting?
It's deeply natural, which is a way of saying it is, unprofessional for the most part, which is what I like about this movie. No, he just kind of mumbles his lines and he kind of blasts through everything, and really nothing phases him. It's a deeply soulful performance because he's basically just doing himself, and then it just happens to be also a true story. Like I said, I love these movies starring musicians. There are 3 in particular from a decade earlier. It is musicians in crime movies. In 1961, Johnny Cash is in a movie called 5 Minutes to Live. Also in 1961, Paul Anka plays a criminal in Look in Any Window, which is deeply weird. And then in 1967, Roy Orbison tries to be Elvis in The Fastest Guitar Alive, where he has a gun inside of his instruments, like Desperado style.
And some of these guys just only made the one movie.
Totally.
As an actor.
Roy Orbison apparently had like a 3-film deal, and then the other 2 just didn't happen. He's like, I hate this, because everybody was chasing Elvis movies when they shouldn't have. Because even half of those movies, because he made 3 or 4 a year, are not good.
Yeah, there's something kind of neat when someone who we know of, like in other fields, they make one film as an actor, and that's
right. Right. And even so, it's 21 years old now. 8 Mile, Eminem's film, and then he was going to be the next big actor. I remember he was attached to Have Gun Will Travel, the adaptation of the TV Western, and that he's never been in anything else, and it's been 21 years. Did he never
make a second film after that? I always thought he was in 2 or 3. He's only in that one.
As far as I can tell, I never saw Eminem in another film, and I see as much as goddamn possible.
Yeah, it's like when I worked in film casting in LA in 2008, and my boss Valerie McCaffrey, we were casting a Manson family movie that never happened by the director of Freeway,
Matthew Bright. We worked with him for 3-4 months on. We had like a bunch of sessions, and we had some great actors come in for that. And one day I was sitting in there, and all of a sudden Valerie turns to me. She's like, they were trying to figure out who's a name who could play the lead girl in the movie. And Valerie goes, Britney Spears. Yeah.
And we spent a month, 2 months trying to like get her to read the script, and we put out an offer and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there going, but Valerie, she just did that one movie in 2002, and that's the only one.
Right.
But she was convinced Britney's acting career could continue with the Manson murders. It would have been great. with Matthew Bright behind the camera and Britney Spears. Could you imagine that? That would be amazing.
I love Matthew Bright. You don't understand. I just bought the special edition of Freeway. It has a really cool
Freeway is so good. That's the one I raved about to him on the day I met him. I'm like, Freeway is fantastic.
Eminem has played himself in a couple movies. That's Funny People and The Interview, but he never acted again, as far as I know.
He's really good in 8 Mile. It's amazing that he only did that one movie.
It's a really cool movie. No, I like, and I prefer the musicians who act and then keep their other career. That's why Ice Cube and Ice-T are so cool. David Bowie was a phenomenal actor. Sting, less good of an actor, but he's interesting, like in Quadrophenia and Last Temptation of Christ. But yeah, people like Bobby Darin is in like a war comedy called Captain Newman MD. Very weird stuff. I love Lyle Lovett. I like Mark Anthony, Tom Waits, Debbie Harry, Marie Chevalier, Rudy Valley, Art Garfunkel, as we talked about in Carnal Knowledge. Perfect in that. And then of course, like I love Elvis.
That was like his only film, right?
Yeah.
Or Garfunkel.
Yeah. No, he made a few other. There's one really dark, screwed up movie he made.
Okay, but very few.
Very few. Lauryn Hill in Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit.
Right.
Which do not make fun of that movie. That's a great movie.
No, I enjoy it's not as good as the first one, but it's fun.
Oh, it is much better.
Oh no.
It got terrible reviews though, so I understand. At the time people didn't like it. It is the coolest
movie
I've
been doing my slow rewatch of old Disney movies on Disney Plus. I've been going through as a geek year to year, so I'm in 96 right now rewatching like their movies, and I did like a rewatch in the last year and a half. I did Sister Act 1 and 2, and I had a much better time.
No, the first one's a real movie. The second one's an experience.
The second one feels like it's a script for a different movie that they tailored it to be
awesome.
Sister Act.
See, I love things like that. I love things that don't quite fit. I think Flea's a great actor, and as a huge fan of This Is Us, Mandy Moore is the best. But she still makes music.
Are you sad that Jimmy Cliff didn't act more? Like, do you think that we had some good performances in him that never came to be?
I don't know. I mean. Then I saw Club Paradise, his other movie, where he's basically playing the same character. He doesn't have a lot of range as an actor, which is totally fine. I would rather he just be in a couple movies. He's also in like one crime film like a decade ago called like The Jamaican Dawn, which I have not seen. No, I feel like he's a musician and he knew what he was and he knew how he stood out. He's one of the few, he's the only musician in Jamaica to get like their version of like, a knighthood. He just made a career out of being super cool and bringing reggae to the world and being incredible. And he did it with this film, which is a great advertisement for the album itself. I'm sure he could have grown as an actor. I would have liked to see him in more, but he seems like this is exactly what he wanted to do, because he could have moved to America and just, been in a bunch of bit parts.
Right.
That would have run to the 80s, a bunch of like weird comedies. But I think he just stayed in Jamaica and just was a bomb ass dude.
Yeah, no, I really liked him in the film. It's very natural, even though some of it's a little bit, like there's not like, it's definitely like a craft to his performance, but there is like a real person on screen. You really kind of identify with that, and it's fun to watch that sometimes, because usually we're watching movies where everyone's been trained and they have their education behind it, and sometimes
keep them on your toes.
Watch just a natural kind of performance. I like the vibe of like everybody in this movie. Like, but there's a woman he has sex with who's just got like acne all over her face, and the camera's like shoved up in her face. And I'm like, awesome, show me that. Like, you don't see that. How many teen movies have we watched where they're all like just perfect skin? Everybody's like, I mean, like that drives me crazy as well.
Yeah,
but
and it's
fun like, when you see actors who aren't just naturally like beautiful that we expect them to be in a movie, but she is beautiful, and I'm like, gorgeous. Yes, let's see more of this in movies. I like that.
Yeah, and I watched this with my wife, who had never seen or heard about the film, and she knew some of the songs, and she tends to not like plotless things. Like, she reads like a novel every week. She really likes a story first more than a vibe. Yeah. I'm a vibe person, an emotion person more, and she responded to this really well, mostly because of the music, but also like I haven't seen something like this before. And honestly, you haven't seen, I know I said it's like a template for later movies, and I just mentioned some of them, but it is still extremely unique and singular experience in the long run. So I'm so glad the album is in the Library of Congress, and I hope the movie will be soon, because I think it is a vital, I mean, it's a Jamaican film.
Oh, I bet it will
However,
be.
because it came out in America through Roger Corman, who is one of the most influential producers of all time and a major part of American cinema, there's no way this wouldn't be in here.
Oh, I think it's way too important of a movie to not eventually get in the Library of Congress. I could see that happening very soon. Let's see. The film received mostly positive reviews. As of right now, it's at a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Roger Ebert gave it 2.5 out of 4, basically just because he thought the last 20-30 minutes became more kind of plot heavy.
Was he with Chaz in the early 70s?
No, I believe they didn't meet until like 90, 91.
Okay. Yeah, had this come out in the 90s, once he was with Chaz, he would have just been head over heels in love with it, I think. More than anybody else other than maybe Scorsese, Chaz Ebert had a huge influence on his taste.
That's awesome.
And she loved this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. From the little I've seen of her in interviews and things, like Chaz Ebert, like an extraordinary woman. Like I adore her. She's amazing. And let's see. The staff of Variety magazine wrote that the film has a sharp and racy rhythm in keeping with the music of the Isle, plus an underlying social theme in the guise of a familiar tale. Very nice. So yeah, the critics for the most part liked it. It sounded like it wasn't a huge hit upon release in the United States, but became kind of a cult midnight movie over the months to come, which is really neat.
Yeah, if this were like 15 minutes shorter, I would program this at midnight immediately. Hour 47 at midnight is a little tough.
Right. I was thinking about that too last night. I'm like, does this need to be an hour 47? Which, by the way, on IMDb, it says 2 hours. And then I put it on last night on Freevee and it says an hour 43. And I'm like, that's kind of like a big difference. Like, why does IMDb say 2 hours?
I don't know.
I was like mentally prepped for 2. And I'm like, oh, it's only an hour 43. I was like, oh, maybe it's on Freevee. That's like 17 extra minutes of ads.
Right.
And then, because I watched the first ever episode of Murder, She Wrote, which I'd never seen after Angela Lansbury's death. I'm like, let me watch a few of these. I've never seen. Let's watch the first one. And it's only available on Freevee. And there was an ad like every 6 minutes, and it drove me up the wall.
I can't do it.
And I did one episode, and I said, I can't do it. Like, I could do it if it like plays 4 minutes of ads at the front. I can go to the bathroom, come back, and then play. But it's like, and there's not like, it's not even like commercial breaks or ad. It's just like, it'll be like in the middle of a line of dialogue, and it's 3 minutes of ads. And I'm like, I don't know how people watch that. It happens on Tubi as well. I don't know how people do it. Like,
we're spoiled. Well, I mean, for me, it's more that I live within 10 minutes of the greatest video store in the world.
Oh, right.
And so I can get whatever I want. But no, I've only watched Tubi or Freevee when it's something that's about to be covered on a podcast. And that's the only place it is. And I just, because it's not like a human being puts in those commercial breaks. It is just automated. And it's so freaking frustrating.
So, then last night I watched The Harder They Come on Freevee, which I was like annoyed because later I looked on YouTube and the movie was on YouTube by like 3 different users, so I could have just watched it there. But Freevee, it had 2-minute long ads in the first 20 minutes. I'm like, ugh. And then there was a 30-second ad in the last 20 minutes. That was it. Like, there was literally a middle hour of nothing. So I don't know why does Murder, She Wrote get like 20 minutes of ads in a 40-minute show, and then I watch an hour and 43-minute movie and there's just 3 little ad breaks. I was kind of confused by that, but I'm like, okay, better for me for this movie. 2 more pieces of trivia here. So you know this about Paul Simonon, the bass player for The Clash, was inspired by this film when he wrote the song The Guns of Brixton.
Yeah, great song.
He references the film in the lyrics. You see, he feels like Ivan, born under the Brixton sun. His game is called Surviving at the end of The Harder They Come. The song appears as the 10th track on their groundbreaking 1980 double album, London Calling. Jimmy Cliff, the star of the film, himself covered the song, as the 6th track of his 2012 album Rebirth.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool piece of tribute.
Rebirth, I think, is the one that's produced by Tim Armstrong of Rancid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they collaborated once in the aughts. I think that's the album. I could be off by a couple of years, but that might have been Tim's idea, because like I love the Clash. Of course you like the Clash. You were in Rancid. Well, no, speaking of the Clash, who's their music is deeply reggae influenced. There's a movie I saw last year restored called Rude Boy, featuring the Clash, which is a story of one of their roadies. It's sort of a documentary, but it's fiction, and it's the story of this hard drinking, flirting with white supremacy roadie who follows them around and like wanders through 80s Britain while helping them out, interspersed with concert footage of the Clash. And they also act in it as themselves. I'm the only person in the world, I think, who likes this movie, but I saw it restored in a 500 seat theater and was just madly in love with the vibes of it. So just if you like the vibes of The Harder They Come, where it's just kind of floating around and then something kind of harsh happens, Rude Boy / The Clash.
Yeah, another film that we talked about a few months ago, Superfly. They're like, in terms of like a vibey movie where the main character sits down and they like sing a whole song from beginning to end. Like Superfly was another film we talked about a few months ago that has some of those vibes. I would say it's a little bit more plot heavy than The Harder They Come, but it does have those like sections of the movie where not a whole lot is happening. It's just about behavior and music and having a good time. You don't see that in very many movies now. Like usually now it's like every scene has to matter. And some kinds of movies need to have that, but then other ones, it's like, okay, can we just have a moment of these two characters just sitting and talking for a minute? Sometimes I just want a movie to just relax.
And then we have people like Denis Villeneuve who can do both at the same time. Dune is nothing but a vibe. I don't understand half of the silly nonsense words they say in that movie, but I understand what's happening and I just vibe with it.
Yeah, Damien Chazelle's Babylon is a good example of a movie. I really loved a lot of it. And whenever the movie just slowed down and just let people talk, that I was like really into it. Yeah. And some of the big stuff at the beginning was fun, but sometimes it's like, just Damien, just relax. Like let's like that scene. You've seen the new Babylon, right?
Yeah.
The scene with Gene Smart and Brad Pitt is so great. Like some of those moments, like the dialogue really rings true and the acting's so great. And it's like, we don't need to rush through all of this. It's like, geez, if they had him cut that movie down to 2 hours, like, I don't know. I think all of the good stuff would have been lost and it would have just been the plot. And so I guess we needed that extra hour, but totally. Did you know that The Harder They Come was adapted to the stage?
It's been adapted once. It was adapted like 15 years ago. And in a few months, the Public Theater in New York, let me bring my notes back up. Susan Laurie Parks, the Pulitzer Prize winning playwright and actress, has adapted The Harder They Come into a brand new musical co-directed by Sergio Trujillo and Tony Taccone. Tony Taccone is the former artistic director of Berkeley Repertory Theater and the father of Jorma Taccone, of the Lonely Island.
This is the one that's being staged at New York's Public Theater for 2023.
It was supposed to come out this year for the 50th.
Oh, okay. Well, that would make sense. I mean, if it dropped in New York in February of 1973, because I'm big on these 50th anniversaries. I don't know if you know that about me.
What? No, that would be. I want to see how they can fashion that into, because plays can also be vibes, but also you kind of need a storyline to kind of move your audiences around, because an audience sitting in the theater is not the same as a camera. As much as I would like somebody to pick me up and move my body around like a camera, it's a different sensation. So I really want to see how they adapt this pretty loose story, like cinematographically and narratively, into a musical. I mean, I know exactly how The Harder They Come scene is going to look when he gets to the recording studio and everything happens, and like probably a spotlight will hit him from 3 different angles, and like we'll just feel catharsis and orgasmic joy as he finally figures out this song to flip off the world and give the Jamaican working class and the downtrodden an anthem. So it's probably he probably like commits a crime at the end of the first act and goes, oh no, intermission. And then act 2 is all him running away Javert style. I mean, Jean Valjean style.
Yeah, some of these films that have been adapted to stage, I'm like, wait, how do they do that? Like, how do they incorporate all of the locations, all of the characters?
The trick is to rewrite it because they're different media. Like, I just rewatched the Moulin Rouge stage musical, which is nothing like the film. And I also just rewatched the film because SIFF does a New Year's Eve screening every year where you party and watch the film.
That's awesome. But so that has nothing to do with the 2005, 2006
I don't believe adaptation. So, no.
And so Susan Laurie was in the UK.
Right. Yeah. Susan Laurie Parks is an American playwright.
Okay. So in the UK in 2005, it was adapted with a script overseen by Hensel, the director of the movie. The show opened in March of 2006, boasting the original soundtrack as well as a couple of additions. The production later moved to the Playhouse Theater, was performed in Toronto and Miami.
All right. Yeah, that sounds like where they would be. British musicals tend to be more review based. So that's probably how they did it. Like, here's the songs, here's a snippet of story, but you are here for the music. It's basically a glorified concert. That's how Britain does a lot of their musicals. Oh, my hair is awful.
So I would love to see this new version by Susan Laurie Parks.
It's too bad I just went to New York for my birthday in November because I want to be there in March because that's when Sweeney Todd with Josh Groban happens.
Okay.
From the creative team of Hamilton.
Oh, cool. Like a new adaptation?
No, it's directed by Thomas Kail and the same music arranger who's instrumental in Lin-Manuel Miranda's music sounding as good as it does.
Nice.
Alex Lacamoire is the name, who's a Cuban American.
Well, if it ever comes to Reno, I'll check it out.
It's gonna happen. Yeah, it's Josh Groban and Annalee Ashford, and this is like the big revival of the year. Tickets are already selling like crazy, and I can only go to New York once a year, and I just went and I saw 8 shows, 7 of which were musicals.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'll definitely like read into it, and like I want to see like what are the reviews like, and what do they say about it? Because it sounds like it's dropping pretty soon.
Yeah, and the public has really good taste. And my wife works at Seattle Repertory Theater, and they share a lot of shows. So if it's actually good, and Seattle is currently doing a very good job trying to bring non-white playwrights into the city, who knows if that'll last? I would love it to last, because we need theater for more than just the rich white people who live in this city. If it's any good, it will end up somewhere on the West Coast, and I will travel to see it because I like the music that much.
Yeah. No, the music in this movie is such a character. It's like most movies, it's like the character is the story. Maybe there's some other things, but in this movie, it's the story and it's the location and it's the music. Like they all create this really interesting film. So as it played for a while, I was like, I don't know, am I into this? It's kind of, as you say, vibey, and it's kind of drifting. It's a little bit, but by the end of it, even though I was like, maybe it's going a little bit too heavy into plot at the end, like I'd give it a 3 out of 4. Like I had a good time with it. I enjoyed it, and I didn't think it overstayed its welcome. I think 2:10 might have been too long. I think 1:40 was a good length for this movie, and I really like Jimmy Cliff in it, and the music, as you say, is amazing.
Sensational.
So that takes us to our final 2 segments, the Divine Double Feature. What would you pair with The Harder They Come?
I went and chose the 2019 Melina Matsoukas movie, Queen and Slim.
Ooh, I think I've chosen that twice on a Divine Double Feature.
Oh, cool.
It's a great movie. That movie. I feel like doesn't. I feel like I remember I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it. I think watched it on DVD at home a few months later, and I was really taken with it. I love the acting, and it's very like really immersive filmmaking. It's really good. Like, why would you pair that with this?
It's also really vibey, and it is another Black outlaw story. And this one was written by Lena Waithe, who's now, after winning her Emmy for Master of None, has really broken out as an incredible like showrunner and writer. I think Melina Matsoukas, who is responsible for a lot of Beyonce's videos, just directs the hell out of it. It's a divisive film. I know that because we see them suffer a lot at the end, and a lot of the movie is about suffering. And it just kind of came at a time when we didn't want fictional narratives of things that were happening in the news, and I think a lot of people responded negatively to it. I think it's a phenomenal film. Daniel Kaluuya and Jodie Turner-Smith are just remarkable in it, and it looks great. And I can't wait to see what else Melina Matsoukas does with her career.
Yeah, it's a great film. Love the performances. I also have a Daniel Kaluuya movie, and it's a very slim connection.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite films of 2022 is Nope. And in the house, there is a poster of The Harder They Come.
There is. I just rewatched it with my parents, and because I remember seeing like Buck and the Preacher poster back there, and I didn't notice until this time that poster was there.
Yeah, Film at 50 is representing a Nope.
Totally. Oh, it's and Nope works so much better the second time around if you get a chance.
Yeah, no, I want to watch it again. I think I have a Peacock now, so I'm gonna watch it soon. Yeah.
That's how we watched it. Oh, it's like once you know how like what it is and how the things fall into place, you get to really look into the themes of it. That it is and the other connection is, that it is about a story about how Black excellence in art has been pushed down by capitalism. And like my sister, she liked it, but she's like, well, I don't understand why they just didn't leave. I'm like, they need to get the perfect shot. She's like, I get that, but why? I'm like, well, in the after the titles, and you see them in the studio and he's being treated really poorly, you see his resolve in there that I must do something. And that's really cool. So yeah, Nope is, and like the Jean Jacket, the quote unquote monster, the animal is very intentionally white. There's a purpose to that. And watching the second time around, you get to see all the themes come into place. And yeah, it connects really well to The Harder They Come because it is about vibes. It's about Black excellence in art. And it's about their history being flattened. And what is legend. So it's actually that's a great double feature.
Yeah. So Nope is an interesting case of a movie where I've still only seen it the once. When I walked out, I thought it's a slight letdown compared to his first two. And then I have not stopped thinking about it since. I've seen dozens and dozens of movies in the last few months that are like fade away very quickly. And I still think about Nope. That scene at the studio is so horrifying. That's one of the most amazing scenes of a movie this year. And the cast is just dynamite. It's so great.
It's that so
I'm
good.
like, why did I think maybe was it the last half hour? It kind of maybe overstays its welcome a little, like it kind of
when it becomes full Spielberg.
Maybe it's that was sensational
film.
I want to watch it again.
Yeah, the thing is, like, but I knew going out of it that's definitely his best made film. Like he really studied. And if you read, I'm sure you read the article how they created a new form of like camera for this because they shot day for night. So the cinematographer had a regular camera and an infrared camera next to each other for all the sequences because the sky is clear and they CG'd in the clouds because that's where the animal is hiding. But yeah, so a movie that is so much about film, that is about you cranking an IMAX camera during the climax, the fact that they created a new form of camera for that is just so thematically perfect. And I couldn't stop thinking about how well shot and paced it is.
Yeah, it's really good, and I'm excited to watch it again now that I have easy access to it on Peacock. I'm gonna take a look and hopefully not be quite as distracted this time at the hotness of Brandon.
Sorry,
I was like, I think this guy's too attractive because I'm not paying as much attention to the story as I should. But no, it's fantastic, and I think it would be like a neat double feature idea with this, along with Queen and Slim. Those are great choices. So beyond the flick, anything else about Jimmy Cliff? Anything else you can say about Club Paradise? What was this movie like?
At first, I was like, "There's a Harold Ramis movie I haven't seen," and then I watched it, and I'm like, "Oh, I see why."
It's Robin Williams, right?
It's Robin Williams. It was meant for Bill Murray, and you can tell. And Brian Doyle Murray co-wrote it, and he's in it as the villain. So Robin Williams plays a firefighter. He retires with his disability pension or whatever it's called, and moves to the fictional island nation of St. Nicholas in the Caribbean. And he and Jimmy Cliff, who's helping him out, who's a musician there, they start a Club Med type thing. And then half of the Second City cast comes in to experience a hellish vacation while this place is trying to be bought out by the evil Brian Doyle Murray, who owns a casino on the other side of the 7-mile wide island. So this has Eugene Levy, Rick Moranis, Andrea Martin. Twiggy is the romantic lead. Mary Gross's first film. I love Mary Gross, but it was going to be Bill Murray, directed by John Landis.
Oh, okay.
And it
after
just
Ghostbusters, right?
after
86?
Ghostbusters, this is 86, and it just doesn't work. Harry Shearer did a rewrite on it, and then I looked in the credits. I'm like, I don't see his name. He took his name off of it. He has a pseudonym called like John Bobot or something, and he says that, and he barely contributed at all. He's like, this is awful. So, and it's also kind of, and the Jimmy Cliff character, like when they're putting together the Club Med, he wants to sing like these protest songs, and Robin Williams is like, well, it's a bunch of white people coming. Can you just sing like regular island music like in Hawaii? So that's their story, is him trying to teach his band these normal things. And then when all hell breaks loose, it's like, screw it, I'm going to sing these awesome songs that has always been part of my career. And the soundtrack is Jimmy Cliff originals. So if you want to hear more of him, he sings a duet with Elvis Costello. And the opening song is by the Kinks, which is weird. But it's so it's Harold Ramis's third movie. So he does Caddyshack in 80, then he does Vacation in 82, right. And then this is 86. He doesn't make another movie until Groundhog Day, 7 years later.
Really? There was that long of a gap?
This movie kind of killed it for a while because it was supposed to come out in 85, and then they held on to it for the following summer. During that time, 4 other resort movies came out.
Summer Rental.
Yeah, not even, they're like weird like nudie films also. But yes, I would get this Club Paradise mixed up with Summer Rental or Spring Breaker, all these other 80s beach movies that did not star teenagers. So I'm like, wait, there's a Rick Moranis movie?
Then that would be a summer release, not
totally.
Like
what it was supposed
October.
to come out like in July, but like instead of this July, let's push it back to next June. Also, it was probably testing poorly.
But Ticket to Paradise came out in October. I was kind of surprised by that. That felt like a summer movie, and I was like, that's an interesting time of year, and it did very well.
There was, I don't think there's any room for it in the summer for it to make as much as it did.
I know. It's so interesting. Like, when do you release your movie? I imagine like the stress, okay, what weekend do we bring this out? Like, I think about Babylon. Like, that movie is not done well. And I'm like, if that had come out in October or July, would it have done better? I don't know. Nobody goes to mid-budget dramas anymore. Sorry, it's all over.
It's all over.
It's done.
And I think Chazelle kind of knew that going into the film, that this is his chance to like go all out.
Just go crazy.
Yeah, this is him. This is like an M. Night around After Earth, and now he's going to go back to smaller movies for the rest of his career. And M. Night is very comfortable. Do next? Who knows? Well, because this cost a bunch, and it's made maybe $6 million. and we're recording this on January 4th, so who knows how it'll do in February? Because the first weekend it came out was during the bomb cyclone across the country, and they sort of blamed that a little bit on its low. But Avatar is doing just fine in the same storm.
Well, it's like I heard, like, well, if it gets some Oscar nominations, it'll do better, which will have been January 24th, and I'm like, will it be in theaters in January 24th? I'm like, no. It will be. It
will do well on $20 VOD, which is how anybody watched. That's my parent, like my mother. You know, we saw 2 movies every weekend. You know, we always snuck into the second one, but I'm very good at that. I don't do that anymore. And since pandemic, she just hasn't been back to the theater. She's just lost the luster for it. So the people who prop up these mid-budget movies are not going anymore, and these were already dying in the last 10-15 years because of streaming and studios just putting all their chips into worldwide releases on tentpole films. So this has already been happening, but now it's super dead. The Fabelmans bombed, for instance.
That wasn't I feel like if the Fabelmans had come out 5 to 10 years ago, would have done much better. I think it was a matter of timing. Like, I don't think there's an audience for that kind of movie right now in the theater.
But when will there be?
I don't know. My dad doesn't like going to the movies anymore. I got him to go to No Time to Die. That was a big deal.
Cool.
And then I was like, I'm going to get him to Top Gun Maverick. He's going to love this. And he was like, I'm good, Brian. I just bought it at home. Opening weekend. I'm like, Dad, it's not at home. He's like, yes, it is. And I looked and he had done like the prepay for when
October.
It drops. Like, Dad.
I finally, because I was waiting. Luckily, they were very smart. They had that come out on the 22nd on Paramount Plus, or the 23rd. So I watched it. I introduced it to my parents, and that was my 5th time seeing Maverick. I'm like, you gotta watch this movie. I saw it 3 times in theaters. I love it so much.
I don't see anything twice anymore, Mark.
That's fine. I mean,
there's so much to see. I have to really have a reason to watch something a second time.
Yeah, I saw In the Heights 6 times in theaters, and would have seen it more had it played longer, but that also bombed.
Like I've been on winter break since December 23rd, and I've watched a 2022 release almost every day since the 23rd of December, and I still feel like I haven't seen enough.
But yeah, I get that. So yeah, in the only other movie Jimmy Cliff made that is really widely available, he's the one of the few good things in Club Paradise.
Okay, is he only in a scene or two, or is he in more?
No, he's fourth build.
Oh, okay, he's in a big chunk of the movie.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. The silly white people don't show up until like 30 minutes in. It's worth watching to finish off Ramus's filmography because his last movie was Year One with Michael Cera, which does not really work.
And doesn't he have a weird one like at the end too, like in the snow?
Ice Harvest was
Ice
earlier.
Harvest.
That was that was in the aughts.
Okay, that's like 05
or 06. That's a really good movie.
I've never seen that. I've never seen Year One. I remember seeing the trailer for Year One, and I was like, I speaking of my dad, he liked to say this when I was a kid in the theater, we'd watch the trailer for a movie and he'd go, video.
Whatever.
But I never got to it on video either. But Groundhog Day is a classic. That is one of the all-time great movies. I love that movie.
Yeah, he really reignited himself in the 90s. It's finally well liked now, but it wasn't at the time. I'm a huge fan of Multiplicity.
Yeah, I saw that with friends opening weekend, and we laughed, and it was fun.
It was on HBO constantly.
It wasn't like the greatest movie, but it was imaginative and kind of fun for 96.
And then he did Analyze This.
Oh, right. And Analyze That.
And he made one between this and that.
What was between this and that?
I got to look this up right now. I'm so sorry.
Wasn't there going to be
talking nonsense now?
Wasn't there going to be a third one? Analyze the other thing?
Right, but Analyze That. I watched on a plane and that was not good. That was a good plane movie.
Yeah, remember Analyze That? I saw opening night with friends and we were like, "Oh, this isn't good."
Between Analyze This and That, he made
Bedazzled,
which is underrated.
I can't believe that popped into my head that I remembered he had directed that.
Good, well, because you got there right as I saw it. Maybe in my eyeballs.
Maybe there's been some talk of Bedazzled in this new, with the whale and Brendan Fraser's comeback. People are like, "What about Bedazzled? That was fun."
Right. They kind of say that as a joke. It's like, oh, look, he's playing multiple characters. And I saw The Whale last week finally, and I want other people to see it so I can talk about it.
Yeah, I took my younger brother Cameron, and I've never seen a face so horrified when we get was it right after the title of just the camera like panning around Brendan Fraser while he's doing something while something's playing. My brother was like, "Oh my god." that was a daring choice to kind of like introduce us to the movie.
Yeah,
but I liked it more than others did. I was into it. I thought it was moving, and I really liked the acting in it. So we'll see what happens there. But so a few other things about Cliff. So beyond, of course, being a musician and actor, he was a multi-instrumentalist, a singer. He did reggae, rock steady. He's the only living reggae musician to hold the Order of Merit, the highest honor that can be granted by the Jamaican government for achievements in the arts and sciences. He was also inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2010.
Yeah.
So cool guy, interesting life. And as we said before, I kind of like that when someone is known for being in like another industry and they just pop up in one or two films and that's it. They're not in a bunch of bad bit parts and 26 movies that aren't worthy of them. It's just like, here's a lead role in this cool early 70s Jamaican movie. He pops up in one more in the 80s, but this is kind of it. Like, this is like his big movie role. And then it's like, okay, peace out, film. It's like, I kind of like that.
Yeah, go out on top, man.
Go out on top. All right, that takes us to the end here, Marcus. Thanks for being here again on Film at 50. If you can let our listeners know where they can find you online and anything you'd like to promote, now would be the time.
You can find me at marcusgorman.com, on Instagram and Twitter at Marcus_Gorman. Without the underscore is some rando in Britain who won't let go of the handle, who doesn't use his.
Can you change that?
Yeah.
Can you change your Twitter? Like if that was dropped, if that went away, like you could take that.
In pre-Elon times, yes.
Pre-Elon
I'm
time.
not sure. And to advertise some stuff, I am currently programming for the Seattle International Film Festival, which is in May this year.
Okay.
I am programming for the Make Believe Seattle Genre Film Festival, which has its first ever festival in March. I am writing hooks for the Cleveland International Film Festival, a sister festival of SIFF, and I will be pre-screening for the Tallgrass Film Festival in Wichita any day now.
Wow.
And by the time you hear this, Brian and I will have seen around 40 Sundance films each.
Oh, you speak for yourself. I'm not going to be seeing 40 films.
Well, I'm sitting in my lovely little home office with my projector, and have already reserved my tickets for 42 films.
Yes, I have my virtual films. It's like 38 I reserved this morning.
Yeah.
And then I will have gone just a couple weeks ago to Sundance in person for 3. I'm only there for 3 days. So I'm hoping I can see 3 movies a day, and that would be 9 films like in person. I also want to like walk around the town, and I don't want to just be sitting in a theater for the whole 3 days and then get on a plane and fly home. But I'm just, it's at the end of 2022, there's all of these kind of big movies and blah, blah, blah. And it's like Sundance is like, it's like a cleanser. It's like, okay, now let's look at some really cool, like smaller character pieces. And I'm excited to see, there's going to be a few that just knock us out of the park that we have no idea that, what's coming. And
right. And there's going to be a buzz because, the winner from 2 years ago, or Coda wins Best Picture and becomes the first streaming Best Picture winner ever.
Right, on Apple TV Plus. I remember I saw that movie in August of 21, and I really loved it, and had no idea in August that it was going to do as well as it would.
Chaos here. Well, because Netflix was pushing Power of the Dog, which is a very good film, but nobody's going to watch it. It's too tough for Academy voters, I think.
Yeah, that movie had been built up to me a lot, and it was like it was very good filmmaking, but it's not to everyone's taste. I'm like, so this is a little. It
was Netflix's fault by making that the front runner through their own gumption that Coda happened, which is a film I really like. You and I both think it's a very strong film. We both defend it, and it feels like an Oscar movie. But yes, if say Warner Brothers had focused more on Dune than their effort to get Will Smith his Oscar, maybe Dune Part 1 would have won Best Picture, which I would have really enjoyed, because you know what movie rules is Dune Part 1.
Great. Is that what we call it?
I'm calling it that because Part 2, they just finished shooting Part 2, and it comes out in like a year and a half.
Right. But I feel like, is there any other movie in history, like of a franchise, where we call it Part 1?
They called it. They just called it Dune.
Is it in the movie?
It's at the top and
Part 1,
beginning and end.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I remember I was surprised by that, because I was like, oh, so because I wasn't sure if 2 was happening yet when I saw the first one.
Yeah, it wasn't.
And I'm like, that's daring to put Part 1 and you don't know if the movie's going to be successful or not.
That is the most Denis Villeneuve thing possible. Right. Just swinging his genitals around.
Battlefield Earth could have said Part 1 at the beginning, and they would have.
Right, because that's only the first half of the book. Oh, thank God.
All right, Marcus, this was a lot of fun. We'll definitely have you on a bunch more for the films of 1973. So thanks for being here. Thanks all of you for listening. You can find us online at filmat50.com. We're on Twitter and Instagram. Check out my YouTube channel, Brian Rowe Video, for all things Oscars. And until next time, remember, 50 never looked this good.